I'd like to introduce Laura, who's going to start, and then followed by Cameron. Laura Clements is an experienced family violence social worker and senior child counsellor at the Australian Childhood Foundation. Laura works within the Pathways to Resilience and Walking Together program in Southern and Eastern Melbourne. And she's joined today by her colleague Cameron Reid, who works as a therapeutic specialist with the Australian Childhood Foundation and the Rise program. Cameron has 20 years experience working in the child and family sector, starting out his career in residential care. All good social workers stuff. Some finished, but it's a good start. And case management with high-risk adolescents, and spent many years working in child protection in Victoria and interstate and frontline leadership roles. Welcome, Laura and Cameron.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for coming. So as we mentioned, we'll be talking about our therapeutic group at ACF called Finding the Path Forward. And we're going to be talking about how we can use group work to empower schools to identify and respond to AVITH early. I'd like to acknowledge the country that we're on today at the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people. And I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present, and also to their children who are the leaders of our future. And I'd like to recognise that sovereignty was never seen. Okay, so what is Finding the Path Forward? School-based trauma-responsive therapeutic group, specifically for young people at risk of using AVITH or they are using AVITH. It's part of our AVITH programs at ACF. We're a specialist AVITH provider. And it's a new program that we've delivered in a couple of regions. So I've delivered it in the Southern Melbourne Metro region. It's also been delivered in the Ovens, Murray and Goulburn OMG regions. And the schools where we've delivered those have been kind of targeted and chosen because we're receiving a lot of AVITH referrals. So there's a high prevalence of AVITH in these schools. It's an 8-week closed group, and in the south we had about 8 young people at a time that we facilitated the group with. We facilitated it with 2 of our AVITH ACF counsellors, and each session we had 1 school wellbeing staff member present as well, which was really helpful. As part of the program, we had a strong connection with the parents of the young people. And we tried to deliver a parenting session, a group parent session for all the parents of the young people around the midpoint of our group as well. After testing out the group a little bit, and receiving feedback from the young people, it became a single gender focused group based on their feedback that they felt most comfortable with that format. You can see here some of the topics that we focused on, which I won't go into too much detail, but basically it was a really trauma-focused group, so we used trauma-based interventions with these young people. We gained a lot of learnings about what makes an ideal referral for a program like this. We found we had really high and consistent weekly attendance really from years 7 to 9. They really consistently engaged. We had some more challenges with year 10 and above, just due to the practicalities of that kind of year level. We found, based on our psychometrics and some wonderful qualitative feedback we got from the young people and parents and schools as well, that it was a really successful AVITH early intervention, rather than for the more kind of complex, like really unstable AVITH cases. But we worked with the schools to identify young people where they're starting to show some of these behaviours, and we tried to kind of use this group to get in as early as we can to help them. These are some of the presentations that we had of our young people, as you can see there. I've just mentioned a couple of them. So they're, some of the young people, some of their externalising behaviours at home were yelling, sibling conflict, engaging in kind of parentification behaviours. There was also some more internalising presentations that we had there as well. And most of the young people that attended had some, risk factors for developing AVITH behaviours later on, a big one being exposure to family violence. Another important learning we had was that it was really important for us to screen the young people in the group that they didn't have interpersonal conflict with each other. Here's a bit of a table of some of the amazing benefits of our group. which you can kind of read through yourself and see, but I'll speak to them a little bit. For the young people, we had a real change in their capacity to read what's going on for themselves and, to identify signs of dysregulation, before they click their lid, being able to track what's going on. One of the amazing findings we found from the group was we really witnessed them integrating what they were learning about emotion regulation and relationships, boundaries and everything with each other throughout the group process. So session 1, they were fairly uncontained and not all that respectful at times of each other's boundaries, but by the end of our groups, they were really integrating that, respecting each other, showing empathy, active listening towards each other, that kind of thing, which was beautiful to see. Emotion regulation skills, increased empathy. Another awesome outcome was because wellbeing was present in the group, we saw a lot of increased help seeking from the young people by the end of the group, being able to reach out to wellbeing for support. Improved school attendance. It was actually a really fantastic way of engaging young people who were refusing school at times to come each week. They really wanted to come and get their chicken tenders each week. So it was a great way of re-engaging them in school. A lot of our young people had, they were isolated. They didn't have a whole heap of friends. They didn't even know each other. They were in the same year level. But by the end of the group, they formed connections with each other, which was fantastic. We saw the parents reported reduced AVITH behaviours at home, improved communication, because of their engagement with us as well, improved empathy for their young people and the meanings behind their behaviours. Some improved, parenting skills around those things that I've mentioned there. And also the parent session was a group session format for them that provided them a really fantastic opportunity to come together and, create some social connection between parents who were feeling isolated and shame at times around their young people's behaviours. Fantastic benefits for the school too. A big one being that we developed really close relationships with the schools as we stayed in those schools for a while. So we're able to do secondary consults with them around general cases. And we saw, real reframing in their understanding of the AVITH behaviours, where they're coming from, being trauma-based and everything, which Cam will speak to more later. Also, the schools we're working with, one school had, 20 to 30 student waitlist for wellbeing support. So it was a fantastic, extra resource for really under-resourced schools in terms of supporting the young people's mental health. And a really great outcome was in the South, we've been facilitating this group for 2 years with wellbeing present. So we've basically finished off with that school. They've learned how to facilitate it themselves. They have our manual, they can facilitate it themselves now. So it's got that community development aspect to it as well. Here's some of the challenges of facilitating a group like this. I think we were all a bit concerned around how we're going to contain these young people with externalising behaviours and make sure it's safe. We found it actually wasn't as much of an issue as we kind of expected, and we had a lot of different interventions that we had in place to try and support the young people to feel safe and contained in this group environment. So one of them was our lockbox here that is beautifully decorated by some of our young people. And this was a fantastic intervention where we could, each week the young people could kind of bring in their stuff from the week and place it in there on a post-it note. And then that they could lock that away and take the key away from the group each week and take ownership of that. It also became a useful exercise and metaphor for them to be able to send their distressing thoughts and experiences to throughout the week. Other challenges, sometimes there was interpersonal conflict that occurred between the young people. But once again, having wellbeing in there really kind of resolved that for us because they were able to mediate that throughout the week. And it provided a good opportunity for us to role model rupture and repair and, resolving those relational issues that are coming up. We found parent engagement was mixed. Sometimes we had really positive engagement and attendance in the parent session. Other times we just didn't get them to attend. We have pretty strict intake criteria and process. So that was a lengthy process, and it does take a bit of resources to get the group up and running. With these young people, often there was a few risks present that we needed to be mindful of. So we had to work hard with our safety plans and risk assessment. And engaging the older students was difficult. Just before I hand over to Cam, here's some of our wonderful feedback that we've received. You can read it there yourself, but I'll read a few of my favourites. From the young people, I liked coming somewhere safe to be and having people to talk to. Another young person said, I don't get angry as much. I can control myself. This was one of my favourite quotes. He has stopped, from a parent, he's stopped clenching his fists when me and my partner are talking to him about his behaviour. He's able to stay and listen until the conversation is finished, then go to his room to regulate. And we received some fantastic feedback from the school, one of the schools we participated with, which was the small group work that we did, helped some of their most impacted students and has made a significant difference in the engagement and connection these students have with their education. So a really fantastic option, I think, if you're considering, how can we support young people with AVITH behaviours, and how can we, use schools as a resource to do that in our communities. And Cam's going to talk a bit more about how we, then build on those relationships we've developed with schools.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk a bit more broadly around the challenges in the mainstream setting. So, and I'll just kind of reference and flying on from the group work, finding the pathway forward. So I don't imagine this list would be too unfamiliar, perhaps, in people's experience, but certainly what we notice just generally with the kind of the practice culture, if you like. But yeah, punitive attitudes towards behaviour. Spoke a lot about that this morning. And an assumption that behaviour is a choice, and all they need to do is just choose right. Again, don't want to sort of rehash what we've already discussed, but that's a fairly predominant kind of position in kind of mainstream settings when it comes to behavioural issues, as we know. But also, and I mean, yeah, great for young people who've had the normal secure development experiences, but not so easy to manage for our young people that have been through trauma and abuse and do not have the skill or capacity to adapt with those expectations. So, which can lead into the labelling of young people. So the violent, disruptive, oppositional, etc. And those labels define the young person by what sets them apart from the norm. And we know this labelling is deficit driven and perpetuates a cycle of shame and rejection, which becomes harder work, not just for the kids, young people, but for the adults, leading in the staff burnout and exhaustion. So it becomes just impossibly hard, and a cycle that just ends up burning everyone out, which can feature in how the staff are kind of feeling at times. That was certainly the case in the setting we were in, which can flow into a lack of cohesion and then conflict even within the staffing group that we're trying to support. There's conflict everywhere, almost replicating the fragmentation of the experience for young people. It's kind of happening in the staffing group, and lots of divisions and no one on the same page. We know that's really problematic for our young people in environments where there is just completely inconsistent messaging and approaches that, again, perpetuate a very uncontained environment. A lack of trust with external providers. So I don't know if that's something that people come across. It probably varies from sort of school to school, but certainly what we felt, Alice and I, but yeah, it was kind of a sense of the extent of people coming in, what does this kind of mean? Are they going to rock the boat? Who are they going to talk to? What are they going to criticise? What are they going to find out? So kind of a need to box us in and keep our influence really contained. That was kind of the feeling early on. We certainly made some good traction. And then, probably flying on from that, but defensiveness regarding feedback. So a lot of people in professional environments, the feedback isn't always a safe experience, so even the word itself can be quite triggering. Someone coming and giving feedback could conjure up a need to be defensive, and it's hard to sort of get traction there. So again, just to check, is that kind of resonate people's experience still? Yeah, good, cool. Much as this applies to the just young people we're working with case by case, I probably should preface this just by saying, I don't know if there's any teachers in the room, but it's a tough gig and schools have a tough gig. So I probably just need to highlight that. So it's not easy working in the environments that they've got to work in and the parameters they've got to work in. Throw in just one kid that is complex needs outside of that resource is tough. So just the need for us to be really thoughtful and tactful of how we engage this space. It's already hard. So we're not going to come in and make it feel like it's hard. I get the need for, advocacy and fierce advocacy. I guess what I want us to think about is not to start there. How do we engage just in a way that's going to be effective and not going to get the walls up? That's going to be the best way to support our young people and empower schools to be more effective in meeting their needs. So tactful engagement, just trying to identify who are the therapeutic allies in that environment. So there's always at least one therapeutic ally. So, and it might not be the obvious one there. The wellbeing team might be the obvious, but it might not be. So, and be really strategic at partnering with those individuals. So that can have an amazing influence if you can have a team of allies, just to then be able to model and take into the environments what we know works with these young people. And it is all about the approach. So empathetic, our kind of groups, and we noticed all these issues in the school environment and everything was going on. And we felt it really important to get a feedback session with the principal. We did a lot of prep beforehand about our approach. We knew it was going to be a really tricky engagement. Just beautifully empathy, went hard into it. We know how hard this is, and staff are doing the best job they can under difficult circumstances. And we get how hard that is. But man, kind of shifted the whole engagement. But empathy for our colleagues, our sector colleagues, our education colleagues, how we use that, really powerful to break down those walls. Relational safety ties into all that. So we're human first, practitioner second. We've got to create space in our professional engagement that promotes relational safety. Strengths approach. And we talk about this a lot, don't we, with our young people and families. Also important for empowering our colleagues, education colleagues particularly, and particularly where it's really in a rush. That we really thought through what we really want to draw out. And there's some wonderful strengths there, particularly some of the support staff that were completely not even recognised and weren't even seen. But we saw just beautiful work that was happening. And that's stuff that has to be drawn out. We drew that out and it created a whole different energy. And instilled some hope as well and focus their kind of attention. Verbal and written feedback. So we tend to do verbal, but written's really powerful. So, and we put a lot of work just preparing that written feedback, which actually helped us be thoughtful when we engage verbally. So again, another, something to think about. It's, can be really, really powerful and done really thoughtfully as well. So feedback direct from the young people, again, a big one, capturing the young people's voice in that feedback, and that was really powerful. Alice had put out some lovely quotes from the young people out of some of the group activities about their experience and what they need. this was direct from them, and it was, wow, it's not us being the experts, it's the young people being the experts in their own life. So that's where the group work, get back to that, is fantastic for some of those activities that are run to Find the Path Forward, really capture that child's voice and messages of support. What more are we able to do to help your staff or in this space? So we did a one-on-one feedback session with the classroom teacher that spent day after day with these young people. That was really powerful. But also things like reflective practice, just having those opportunities to maybe have a group of staff who reflect on the young people that they're working with, and even just come along to the staff meeting, even just talking about our work, that can be really powerful. We're talking about what we do and shift some of those perceptions and narratives. Again, those little things can make a really big difference. So, and group work co-facilitation. So you get the opportunity to run a group, but even co-facilitate, which we had the wellbeing team co-facilitating with us. And that was a great way to sort of partner in that space. So I'll wrap up there. So thank you very much. Actually, I did have, I'll leave that on the slide, on the screen, but just a couple of little prompt questions if you want to just clap your eyes on them and just to think about in your own practice. So thanks for having us share.
Thank you, Laura and Cam. Thank you very much. And if anyone's got any questions or would like to catch up with the crew from ACF, please feel free to do so during the lunch break. We're going to break for lunch now, which will be back over on the other.